I'm Hannah. I work at Tsuga Fine Art and Framing, and currently we have the Colored Pencil Society show up as our main show. And we're here today with Margaret Trent and her piece, Chrysanthemum. Hello, Margaret.
Hi, Hannah.
How's it going?
It's fine. Thank you very much for doing this. I think with the world as it is right now and our little virus trotting around, it's great that we have this facility and that you can do this to kind of help promote the exhibit. Since you can't do all the things you would normally do, like have opening receptions.
Exactly. And it's been a very easy transition, actually, just because of the technology and being able to do it over Zoom and all that. So I'm glad that you're on board and the other artists were on board, so we can.
Yeah, it's wonderful. In fact, I'm hoping that in some ways we will keep being able to do some of these things, because it brings people who are normally quite far apart together.
Exactly.
Which is a positive in something that is really not very positive. So.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's in it, you just never know who's gonna kind of pop into our gallery, online gallery, and see this.
Yeah.
And, putting a face to a piece of art is just, I think it really connects people.
I think it is nice. It's very nice. Yeah.
Great. Well, we'll get straight into it. We'll chat a little bit. First question I have for you is, how did you get interested in and start making art?
I've always been quite interested in the botanical art.
Okay.
And if I tell the world a secret, when I didn't really do art in high school, but I did it at the very end of high school. And I liked drawing plants. And that was the only thing the teacher ever said to me. She said, "That's really nice." She said, "You like drawing from nature." And, I always had an interest in that all the way through my life, but it wasn't until probably, well, maybe 20 years ago, when I moved out here to the Kitsap Peninsula, and I thought, I'm going to start doing this again. I had much more time, but I'm going to start doing this again. If I can find somebody who can teach me the real fundamentals of botanical drawing. And I found that person. It was Kathy McKeehan, and I saw one of her paintings, and that kind of triggered it as well again, was because it's such a beautiful piece with birds and on a vine maple that I liked so much. And I actually went to Kathy's studio and studied with her there with a group, and that's kind of what got me really going again in this world. So that's how I kind of got started into it. It's always been there. I mean, I have a natural science background, so it's always been something I've been interested in.
Okay, that's great. It's always interesting to see kind of where people come from too. Just people that have done art all their lives or have started like doing science. I've actually met quite a few people that have been in kind of a science related field and then moved into the scientific illustration, which I kind of like, scientific and nature illustration.
Right.
Yours definitely falls into that category. Very detailed work.
Yes, it's you have to have a certain personality to do this kind of thing. a little bit obsessive compulsive almost,
Yes. Yeah, and really attention to detail too.
Attention to detail, methodical,
Yes, methodical. Definitely. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. How do you begin creating a new piece?
It's kind of a gradual, slow process. I mean, I will see something that I'll think, and I never have any problem finding something that I want to paint. In fact, I keep a list of things that I want to do. I paint both botanicals and birds, and I tend to try and alternate between them. It doesn't always work out that way, but I'll see something will trigger me. I'll decide, I just finished a pileated woodpecker. I'll decide I want to do that. I want to paint a pileated woodpecker. And then the next thing for me is to decide, well, where am I going to put that pileated woodpecker? How am I going to show him off or her off? In this case, it was a him. And then I will do a lot of, with birds, I usually work from my own photographs. Botanicals, I always start with the actual live plant, if I can. Usually I can. And I will do, with botanicals, certainly I'll do a lot of note taking, a lot of color matching, that sort of thing. And then I also take a lot of photographs because I don't work very quickly. And quite often, something like that chrysanthemum there, it will be a big brown squishy mess by the time I'm, halfway through the drawing. So I do take a lot of photographs and work a lot from photographs. I see digital photography as just another tool in my case that I can use, in this world. So once I've decided what I'm going to do, I'll do some thumbnail sketches, work on what the composition is going to be, how it's going to be presented. And then I will start to do the drawing, which will take me, usually there are 3 or 4 drafts of a drawing before I actually then start what I call painting, but it's painting with colored pencils.
Okay.
And I use drafting film. So my drawing will go under the drafting film. And then I will start to, as it were, paint on the top of the drafting film with the color pencil.
Okay.
And that's kind of it. It's not really, there's no, unfortunately with this kind of art for me, there's no kind of, I'm not one of these creative people where I can splash paint around and make a big mess.
Yeah.
It's kind of
not an abstract person.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's not. But I enjoy it. So
that's great.
I don't know if that answers your question, but that's
you know what? It doesn't, if it didn't answer it completely, I like what you said, so it works out. And you actually answered a question that I was going to bring up was photography. And I know a lot of artists will use it as kind of a secondary medium to kind of help their colored pencil or painting or whatever progress. Do you do photography exclusively with your drawings, or do you have that as a separate kind of entity?
It's kind of I would say it's more of an it's a support mechanism more than anything else, because I prefer to do my drawing. You can't really just take a photograph and put it on paper. I know that there are some people, I think, who will trace a photograph or put a photograph under their paper and just paint on top of it. There's a real danger to that with both bird and botanical work, and that is that photographs can often distort the image. It just doesn't work. Yeah. So the photograph for me is more of an assistant than actually being used as part of the process. It's there. I will use it to help me create the drawing, in some cases to get the proportions right. But as I said, you can't really just transfer exactly what's in a photograph onto paper, because sometimes the perspectives are off, and it just doesn't work. So also, you don't often in a photography today is so good that you can enlarge things up and really see detail, but sometimes you can't. I mean, I've taken pictures of birds and I've thought, just how do those feathers lie at that part of the wing, because I can't see them in the photograph. So you go to, in that case, I'll look at other photographs to see if I've captured it there, or, I'll go to reference material like, the Law's book of, bird drawing, where he can tell you just how many feathers are in that part of the wing.
Oh, wow.
So that you can get it right. So, I use all sorts of things, but the photography is really, I would say it's a support system more than anything.
Okay. Yeah, what a great support system too. I mean, it
is. I mean, as I say, it's there. I know there are a lot of artists, especially in the botanical field, who kind of don't approve of the use of photographs. I understand that. I can understand it completely. But by the same token, it's there. It's a tool.
Why not use it?
Why not use it? Yes.
Exactly. To your advantage.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, fantastic. Okay, the last question I had for you that I wanted to highlight was how has your practice grown and changed over time?
I think it's done quite a lot actually, because when I first started drawing with Kathy, I was doing graphite work. Um, I like graphite. I still do it very occasionally. Um, I'll often do a tonal drawing, which I did for the chrysanthemum, just in graphite to see where the darks are, make sure I've got good contrast in there. Um, then I moved from that to watercolor. And watercolor is great. It's a beautiful medium. It didn't work for me because just the way my life is, it's very difficult to um, just, that you've got jars of water, you've got to get out, you've got to clean brushes. There's a whole lot of things involved in watercolor. And it was very hard for me to pick it up and put it down the way I wanted to be able to. So I moved on. I started putting colored pencil on top of the watercolor, which worked quite well, but then gradually just moved on to doing color pencil completely by itself.
Okay.
And then I moved from the paper to drafting film. And drafting film is just wonderful. I love it because it's faster than paper, but it also gives me or enables me to get a very painterly look to my pieces that I've kind of struggled to get with paper. Mm-hmm. You can get it with paper, but it's a longer process, and the drafting film is just so much quicker.
Okay. Well, kind of going a little more into that, did you use drafting film for this piece, Chrysanthemum? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was there any specific techniques or anything that you really focused on for this piece?
In some ways there were, because of all the petals. It's a difficult drawing because it's a difficult drawing to keep track of all the petals. Mm-hmm. And that was where the photograph actually helped me, because I had numbered the petals on the photograph and then numbered them on the initial drawing. Oh, wow. So that I could kind of match up and make sure that everything was in the right place, because it was very easy to suddenly find yourself really out of whack. Which is why this one, more than others, I used the photographs for, was because the petals, you're sitting with this chrysanthemum, it's gradually opening up.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, now wait a minute, that petal's moved a whole centimeter from the last time it was there. So really with this one, that was one technique that I used just to keep everything in its right place. And then also the focus was on contrast with that one, because that's the second chrysanthemum I've done. And the first one I did, which was a number of years ago, was very flat. And it just didn't have that kind of feeling that you could stick your fingers into the flower. So getting the contrast in that was probably one of the most important things, so that you felt like you could really look into that bloom.
Yeah, you definitely can do that with the amount of detail and the shadowing that you did with the colors towards the center. Really, really stood out.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
What's been this will be my last question for you, but what has been your most difficult piece that you've worked on?
The most difficult piece I've worked on?
The most difficult. I guess most difficult, or something that's just taken you an extreme amount of time that you probably spend a lot of time on these pieces regardless, but any of them stick out to you?
The chrysanthemum was about 50 hours. I wouldn't have said that it was difficult, because there is a symmetry to it and a sense of order to it that makes it in some ways quite easy. Yeah. Once you're started, once you've got all the petals in the right place. Yes,
and number them. That's a great technique.
I don't think. I'm trying to think if there's anything that's really been. There is one piece that I've done fairly recently that was it was nearly 80 hours, and I think for me was probably one of my biggest challenges. Yeah, that might have been, that was a rhododendron, which tend to be quite complicated. So,
Yeah.
and they don't necessarily have that sense of pattern to them. They're a little bit more kind of organic almost, they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's really amazing. I mean, you commented a little bit about it on how much time goes into these things. I feel like sometimes we get people that aren't necessarily in the art world that don't have any idea of how much time and effort and material is spent to create such a beautiful piece. I mean, it makes sense when you really do get down and think about it, but you can definitely tell with this piece, like you just spent, every line has its purpose, right? Yeah, there was no line that wasn't there for a specific
reason.
Yeah. Which I really enjoyed, that kind of repetition and like specific lines and stuff. I really enjoyed.
Right. And one of the wonderful things about doing something like that chrysanthemum is I think a lot of us, we don't stop, and I've probably been guilty of this in the past too, we don't stop long enough to look at something like that and actually see how beautiful and fabulous it is in its construction. Right. I mean,
especially flowers. I feel like flowers, birds with their feathers.
Yeah.
Anything like that. It's just.
And see the different colors that are actually there. Which you can walk past a flower and say, oh yeah, it's red or it's yellow or whatever. But once you actually start to study it and look carefully at it, and even in some cases pull it apart to see how it's constructed, you really start to see something. It opens up a little world to people that, even to me, that it just is quite astonishing, how all this happened.
Right? Yeah. How did all this get?
How did it evolve this way? Why? Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you coming in and getting interviewed about your piece.
Oh, you're very welcome. I appreciate you doing this, Hannah. It's
of course.
It's great.
Yeah, and I think it'll be great. We'll have a few other artists speaking about their pieces as well. I think we have a total of 5. So you're a great addition to that group.
But it's a little bit different as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Everybody's different. I love it.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And I'm going to